Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's edition Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called Leviathan Doctrine, written by Feck Yea. Shizako was bored. What had appeared to be a great adventure, the chance to join the GU cadet program, had turned out to be an arduous exercise of history lessons paired up with countless hours dedicated to various aspects of galactic lore. It was not like he had not expected this. Just the volume and intensity paired up with his quickly dismantled illusions of glorious campus life had crushed his motivations for the time being. As a first year, there was a faint hope to somewhat make his peace with it. The time to ponder his fate was cut short when Professor Kahem entered the room. An elderly xenomorph he still could not properly identify. He just knew that the man was old. "Greetings, students." The man started his lesson like any other, repeating the most crucial aspects of the last one, prompting his audience with questions and answering some questions that were unresolved from the last seminar. "All right, if that is all, we will continue. Does by chance anyone know either the Ishikawa incident or the so-called Leviathan Doctrine?" Nobody responded. Something clicked in Shishikawa. Something from his old school, but he wasn't certain. Better to remain quiet than be an idiot of the class. "Well, maybe that is to be expected. Back in my days, it was a topic amongst my fellow classmen." Shashikal was rather unsure what "back in his days" would mean. As little as he did know what kind of species this man was, he knew even less about their life expectancy. "Given your curriculum, you should all be familiar with ISPA. It is relevant for context." The Tuma Fafala raised her hand. She was somewhat of the class genius, or at least she loved it to be able to participate when she was sure of knowing something. "Yes, the Indigenous Species Preservation Act of 33.211 GUC mandates that every expanding civilization within the GU has to thoroughly survey new systems and seize its rights of colonization should they discover qualifying life forms and instead proclaim a protectorate that is to be passively monitored as a guarantor. Else they could void their expansion privileges granted by the GU. It is often criticized for rarely being upheld, and its control mechanism suffering from restrictive hurdles to clear." A short pause. "That is correct. Thank you." The hollow projector started to portray its default image. "You will hear an original audio log now, illustrated by the feed as it was captured by a monitor satellite." Shashikal perked up. Movie time. He saw the vastness of space, only put in perspective by a giant green marble of planet. White cloud centers and blue veins painting what must be a beautiful world, and the early signs of incoming jumps. The iconic crackles of energy as several ships of somewhat oval designs translated into space, and the wide objective zoomed in on them with remarkable quality. An infographic popped up, each of its lines marked with a complicated-looking timestamp. IJS detected, 8 signatures identified, IFF received, IFF decoded, GRN, Garan, Republic, Navy. General Hale sent, Protectorate status ISPA declared. UNSSG, broadband alert issued. The log showed an indicator for its fast forward, and another line appeared. UNSSGC Ishikawa, GPC 311 responding. Another fast forward, and the grey ships of angular style materialized, just like the others. The objective had to zoom out as it detected its jump signature, and the video was cut between different perspectives, most likely due to other satellites or additional cameras honing in on them. Just then, he noticed that the entire recording had been silent so far, as hard and somewhat short-breathed voice pierced the silence in galactic common. Addressing all Garan Republic Navy ships within the DD-22241-Y system, this is Captain Butter of the UNSSGC, Ishikawa speaking, acting system representative of the United Nations of Sol. You are trespassing on a protected system of the UNS under the ISP Act, and hereby ordered to vacate the system immediately. Should your jump drive still be within our allotted cooldown phase to guarantee safe translation, you are issued to declare the estimated time of departure and cease any unauthorized activity. You will be provided navigational instructions. As a cadet, he was somewhat used to how exchanges go between the various members of the GU. At least he had heard some by now. This one was direct, maybe not friendly, but clear enough, he assumed. What caught him by surprise was someone actually trying to enforce the ISPA. Normally, it was either dismissed by the lobbyists finding a loophole, someone establishing hard facts and saying sorry, or the Senate failing to get any sufficient majority to enforce sanctions because pretty much anyone, at least the civilizations that were still expanding, had one or more skeletons in the closet when it came to prime real estate. Ishikawa, demand dismissed. It took some time for another voice to respond in common. This system is claimed by the Garen Republic and seen as its domain. Foreign fleet presence is not permitted, and you are to remove yourself. Shishikawa frowned. That definitely was less than friendly. Of course, he knew the UNS. It was one of the more prolific members of the GU, after all. But he had trouble grasping the idea of anyone responding like that to one of their ships. A military one, he assumed. Then he remembered what his professor said back in his days, and while he had no idea what the time code used within the overlay meant, this had to be back quite some time. Iran Republic Navy ships, this is your final warning. Under the ISP Act, we are authorized to remove your presence from the system. Any claim to the system and any attempt to dismantle the DD-22241Y Protectorate is challenged by standing mandate of the UNS High Parliament. Any negative response will lead to further escalation. Confirm message. This Ishikawa message received. Confirmed. Dismissed. Translate out of system, or we will be forced to answer your threat and guide. This system belongs to the Republic. Another bullet point appeared. UNSSGC Ishikawa, GPC 311, contacting UNSSG Command. Whole command issued by UNSSG Command. Then the human ship fired up its retro thrusters, creating distance towards the Garen ships, its prow facing the formation of 8 ships. Another fast forward. Ishikawa, your jump drives is cooled down by now. Jump now or face the consequences. Ishikawa actual, we remain. He had to swallow hard. Events like these would not get named incident if they had easily resolved after such declaration. Silence reigned in the room, and he was waiting for another fast forward to propel the timeline. But then the various lenses captured the madness that was to unfold. All 8 ships launched their long-range arsenal at once. Warheads were pushed out of various launchers and started to accelerate at a speed that would be impossible for any ship. The Ishikawa burned its thrusters hard to initiate a spin as it launched its first wave of starlight-lit active countermeasures. The relatively small ship appeared to be carrying quite the assortment for its tonnage, but from visual observation, it was clear that it would not suffice. Another wave of lighter, quicker, and more maneuverable missiles to counter the larger warheads was launched, together with offensive warheads, as the Ishikawa pushed hard to build up speed. He rather preferred to not imagine the forces that must have affected the crew. Well, somewhat successful. Many warheads went by the 2 waves of countermeasures as passive systems were launched. It appeared as streams of light connected the human ship with the incoming assault, while the CIWS engaged in direct fire and bursts of explosive shrapnel. It was not enough. UNSSGC Ishikawa GPC 311 in active combat. UNSSG broadband alert issued. Priority. UNSSG SSG-1 responding. The matter-of-fact pop-ups betrayed the fight for survival and the hard punishment the Ishikawa went through as several detonations bloomed across its hull. As the blinding light vanished, the ship was leaking atmosphere, debris, and he paused. Humans. The spin had lost some of its momentum and had trouble maintaining its axis as thrusters burned hard to stabilize the ship. But even then, he was still there. He was no military expert, but seeing such a vessel endure an alpha strike of 8 other ships was a small miracle. Then he saw the arcs of a jump drive spooling up, crackling across the hull of the Ishikawa, just to vanish the very moment they had appeared. A failed attempt to translate. The cameras switched to the small fleet, and he coughed as another wave of missiles was launched. He did not know if it was due to the injured damage or exhausted magazines of the countermeasures, but while the Ishikawa tried to stabilize its flight, it could not muster the same defense as before. The classroom was illuminated by a series of explosions, and for a moment it appeared the ship had injured yet again. A white flare filled the viewport, and the camera zoomed in several hard steps to capture it in its entirety, just for there to be no ship, no Ishikawa left. UNSSGC Ishikawa GPC 311 presumed destroyed. USN broadband alert issued priority. USSN Second Fleet SGC 7 responding. Then the projection halted, showing yet again the default image as the professor stood up again. What you have seen here were the events that led up to and ended in the Ishikawa incident, a vessel of the United Nations of Sol, acting well within the regulations of the ISPA. It led to the complete loss of the ship and the death of its entire crew, 153 sentient beings. It marks the failure of law that is only upheld if someone stands up for it. Or so some say. It was clear that his professor tried to maintain a certain balance. Too much criticism of the GU, its legislator, and enforcement was not really part of the curriculum, Shizaku assumed. Atuma Parafala raised her hand again. But it was not of help, was it? They were destroyed. His educator looked at her with a short pause, maybe glad someone pushed the lesson forward. The Ishikawa was destroyed. Yes, that much is sadly true. As you might have noticed by now, someone might argue that might makes right, and that this was the approach of the Garen Republic. Someone might argue it was well-established status quo regarding many GU laws, not just the ISPA. The thing is, what if someone does not bend? The holoprojector showed another still image, a short recapitulation of death and suffering, more expressed in numbers and hard facts. The Garen Soul War, as you can see here, was raging on over 4 GUC years. Its toll in life was massive, compared to the border skirmishes of the time, and all initiated by fighting for something that did not even belong to them. The UNS responded in full force regarding its protectorate, and as the vanguard force of the Republic had been destroyed, the Republic pulled the entirety of its tributaries into the conflict. Only a coalition force under GU mandate could enforce a demilitarized zone after the UNS had pushed the Garan territory and occupied several of its remote colonies. The UNS, which at that point had been a strong player within its region, had fully materialized into rivaling the GU Peacekeeper Corps, which made the inclusion of neutral coalition forces necessary in the first place. The holoprojector vanished again, as peace was forced onto them. They clawed a few exclusion rights from the GU, including the then-passed law and military build-up restrictions. As you may remember from the start of this lesson, I spoke about another thing, the Leviathan Doctrine. As the then High Chancellor of the UNS was permitted to address the Senate, he made his words, which are often shortened by now, a promise kept, a threat fulfilled. The projector showed a human female standing at the speaker podium of the GU Senate. His knowledge of xenomorphs was rudimentary at best, but even he could see the fiery expression in the eyes of that woman. He otherwise appeared frail and unremarkable to some of the physically more imposing species. The video cut straight to his speech. And while my people do not revel in war, I stand here before the Senate as you force us with loaded guns to halt, to pause, to take breath. And for this, we thank you. It is said that to be a predator to one another is human nature, even amongst ourselves. That to escape such state, we would need to join the Commonwealth. That we would need to shackle ourselves by rules and laws. The United Nations of Sol were created to foster peace and prosperity for all. They are the sovereign that binds us. We keep our promises, and we will make sure that our threats will be fulfilled should we be violated. This is a promise that we make in front of this esteemed chamber. Do not make us abandon our constraints, for you do not know what dwells within human nature. Do not awaken the Leviathan. She made a short pause. At the end, we remain. End of story. I'd greatly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Caspar Arnholt, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.